Hi. I hope this is not aggravating, but the way it's turned is because it won't stay up on the little magnetic thing, so I think it's okay. I just want to talk about a couple things. Somebody made a comment about how I put up my 2 videos. I just put up the second half of the video reading my paper that I wrote. And then I like reading it because I can fill in between the lines some more of the thinking that went into it, seeing as it's the one paper I wrote that kind of summarizes everything. And it's only a few pages long, even though it took me like 3 hours to read it because I was talking about it too. But and it's single space. It's like a lot of stuff in those few pages. But I just wanted to say that I've been thinking about this stuff for like 40, 50 years, and all on my own. I just like pushed myself kind of underground in my thinking because it didn't have a lot to do with the everyday world of people getting degrees and grants and things like that. So I just like did it for fun. It's like when I first started doing computer programming when I was in high school, taught myself a couple of programming languages, basic HTML, basic and Pascal, and then I also learned HTML for web programming. Did that briefly. I used like the Dreamweaver program, which worked pretty good. Not sure what the most popular ones are now because I haven't done it in a while, but I just loved it because it was like an art form to me, and I learned by doing it. And that's the thing, is I've been like kind of interested in so many things in my life, and it's like it looks like so much attention deficit disorder. But to me, there was always like a rhyme and reason to it. And I like that terminology, rhyme and reason, because everything we say, everything we learn, everything we do feeds back in on itself, and it's like nested meanings. So like when you say rhyme and reason to it, even though it looks like it's random, I like to take metaphors and unpack them because there's more in there than we normally think. If you read like George Lakoff's books and stuff, he talks about how a lot of our metaphors are related to our bodies. And so we use a lot of these things to understand things in the world and transmit ideas. And I don't think that that's happens in a vacuum. I think it's a natural property of information. And the reason that our brains do it so easily is because before we invented language, that's what they did in the natural world. That's kind of what they did. This thing is falling now. See what I mean? This is going to be bad. Okay. So anyway, I do like these colors though. So yeah, so metaphors and stuff like the rhyme and reason. I mean, this is not something I even thought of before I started this video. It's like, this is how my brain works. I just go off on tangents constantly. Everything explodes into meaning. And so I see a lot more in things than most people do. It's very difficult for me to get my ideas across, especially when I just sit here thinking about it by myself, unconstrained. Most people constrain their thoughts with like an inner dialogue, which is like a social thing. Like when back in the day when I was first starting psychology, I wrote to B.F. Skinner about language because he had very definite ideas about language when I read his books. And then I also wrote to Noam Chomsky about his language ideas. They both wrote me back and told me like their take on things. And for B.F. Skinner, he was like, I can almost quote verbatim what he said in the letter. He was like, the language is a behavior mediated only, a behavior shaped only through the mediation of other people. So if you have an inner dialogue, that means like other people and the way they think and your purpose and your communications are shaping what you're thinking. But if you don't have inner dialogue, you think in terms of like just reality, it's hard to describe because it's not like pictures. I'm just thinking with stuff the way it works. You know, I try to make my thoughts work like the world. I'm trying to say. So like, for example, I found out that it was different that when I was driving a car, I was aware of everything down to the atoms. Like when I put my brakes on for an extended time coming down a mountain or something, I would think about the type of brakes I had. Like I am very interested in like everything. I warned you. Like the type of metal that was used in the brake rotors and what was going on in the brake pads, and how if the rotors had been forged, that the molecules would be laying smoother so that if they expanded from heat, there would be less wear from the heat because them heating up, because then they would be regular when they expanded and maintain their smooth surface more. I knew that the molecules would be heating up, and that could cause problems. Obviously, there's break fade and things like that. But I just had this sense for everything, and I just kind of knew how long it would take, given my experiences with cars. And sometimes you smell the brakes because they get so hot. Sometimes they actually catch on fire. I've seen that before. It's a long story. My brother did that once. So I can get off on another tangent here, but I just wanted to say that when you think about things and how they work, and you nest all of the functions of them without regard to what you're going to say or do with it, just because you just have this overwhelming idea, you want to know how things work and the meaning of them, you just dive into it and you do it. And then I also notice things like when you read books, it doesn't even matter what book, you just read books over and over and over and over again. It's like it oils your brain, especially like storybooks where you just forget yourself and get into it emotionally. The things that happen tend to prime and bring these ideas of how things work in these images. Like when you get image after image after image after image, it makes like a movie. And then you don't remember every image, you just remember like how things worked in the movie and the emotional impact it had on you and stuff. So you kind of get a heuristic way of keeping the memory, and then you can unpack it into the details later too. So what I'm trying to say there, but anyway, that's what I was doing in this paper, is trying to put in the basic idea in the most succinct way I could. And that's why almost every sentence has like a whole researcher working on what I said in that sentence. But for me, that sentence is much more meaningful because it unpacks into years of diving into all those subjects, and then you distill it out. So like with Joseph Campbell, when he read a whole bunch of legends and stories and things like that, he found almost like a monomyth, they call it, like a unity behind all of the stories. So I started finding those sorts of things, but since I was building a model of reality, I started seeing unity behind things out there in reality. So like everything has a functional side, and then there's also the meaning side. Until you understand that, then you can't understand anything about how the world actually works. And I'm trying to put this in the best terms possible, but it's very obvious if you look at human language ability. Because words are black little squiggles on a paper. They're like a very good way of seeing the separation of meaning and function. Because we have all these functional symbols that don't look like anything. But if you put them together in the right way, then we can see the meaning in them because we have accepted meanings for each one of them and everything. So like for words and their order and things like that, like cooking apples versus I have a bag of cooking apples, or they were cooking apples. Just there's so many things that in context it changes the meaning of those things. And it's very much like the way the molecules make up our bodies. Like you can have a molecule that would do something else in another organism, like exaptation and evolution, where something existing trait is used to do something else. Like originally the feathered dinosaurs used feathers for like insulation and water repellent kind of stuff so that they wouldn't be water cooled as much. I don't know, but I'm just saying that the point is not the details of that. You don't want to get bogged down in the grammar so much as the meaning, and then once you realize what they're trying to say, then you can kind of figure out the grammar too, but you kind of have to do it together. So then they made wings out of what was there. So that's kind of like how I think language came about, is that everything is inherently symbolic. It actually is, only it's non-verbally symbolic in our right brain. So our holistic, religious, right brain already sees unities everywhere, or meaning, okay? So then we have the left brain that uses that pattern in nature to make our own symbols. So this is why I talk about the God power thing, because we are obviously reflecting. It's weird to think and say this, but our bodies and minds and our civilizations are echoes of whatever created this universe. Of that, there can be no doubt. It's obvious. It's like if you see like a book that say Stephen King wrote or something, you read another book and it sounds like a Stephen King book, you know what I'm saying? You know, and it's like he writes books a certain way, and you can see that someone like that wrote it. So when I talk about the way that these meanings echo and how we are a symbol of how the universe was assembled, I call that basic principle of information that everyone ignores. It's like we've been paying attention to the vocabulary and grammar of this great book with science, but missing the real meaning of it. So it's kind of a shame. It's like we're correcting, if you will, or something worse, like ego. Like when people say that you have to get rid of ego to see true meaning, I think this is what they're talking about, because ego is like a constricted time frame for my own wants and needs, my own plans and stuff like that, and intentions. I never got that when people talked about you gotta shut off the internal monologue, and I think a lot of it is having to do with your own plans and intentions, really. And so you miss like the higher meanings and things. So you can see how this relates to religion, obviously, and the blind man and the elephant and that kind of stuff. I think with the Tower of Babel stories and things like that, what really caused the problem was we had our language, our natural language of the universe, confused by our own speech and language when we invented it. So we stopped seeing the connection between things. And then it makes sense. It's the same ideas of the ego. You go about your life doing things, you're using language. You know, behavior only mediated through other people. So pretty soon you get into a pattern that's like ants. I hate to say it. I love E.O. Wilson. Oh my God, I read his stuff. If you read his book Anthill, that's one of my favorite books I've ever read. It's like from an ant's eye perspective. By looking at the natural world, it's a way out, because you can see the patterns in the natural world and they can tell you who you really are and what's important. So you look at ants and you go, they're so freaking social, it's ridiculous. And they have a language, it's pheromones. They follow these pheromone trails. It can even rain, and the trail is like indelible in the rain and stuff. So it's like ink that doesn't smear when it gets wet. We have that. You know, and it's like waterproof drives that you put in your zip drives or whatever. So we have these kinds of things that we transmit information. It's so important. We want to make it waterproof. We want to store it in fire safes, you know, that kind of stuff, because they're important papers. So they did the same thing with their survival related language, but that's all they have. They can't see the higher meaning. And guess what? Screech to a halt and never understand anything. It's almost like I feel like all life is one, don't get me wrong. I love animals, and ants include. I love them. I could just lay on the ground staring at them. I love them. I've fed ants before because I just thought they were so freaking cool, and I wanted to return the favor of their teaching. You don't understand what I mean when I say I love them, like deeply love ants. And every kind of bug. I even love like spiders, birds, of course. But so anyway, the ants, when you watch their behaviors, you realize that they do a lot of the patterns we do every day. What is different about us? Look at us in context. Don't just read the ants and think, that's a very successful pattern of ants, so we should act more. Everyone says like social behavior propelled by our spoken and written language is why humans are so powerful and able to overcome obstacles. No, it's not. It has nothing to do with that. That is like just part of the story. What it really is the stuff that we don't see and we don't speak because it's in our right brains, these unities that we see in things. The meaning. So it's kind of like there's two ways to look at the universe, and one of them is from the Big Bang end, and then we're moving towards something, obviously, in the other end. So this is what I wrote in my book, Textbook of the Universe, A Genetic Ascent to God, because I, first of all, redefine God, and that's like we've had a very sketchy way of looking at God, and we've projected a lot of our animal nature onto what God might be and stuff. And if you remove all of those things by looking out at the world and actually learning from what, if you believe in God, God put in the world through evolution. I think evolution's a fact. We can't really, sorry. But I can also talk about God as being the center of all meaning, like what we're moving towards in meaning, coming from the other direction in time. And the universe to me is obviously a teaching machine. Just like, this is funny. Okay, I'm going to preface this by saying B.F. Skinner was a poet before he became the behaviorist that was famous for saying that we shouldn't think about consciousness and just shape behaviors with rewards and punishments and all this stuff that was like so Spartan and just beyond people's experience, but they couldn't quite argue with him. You know what I mean? It's like, so he really was, I think he was making a point. I think he knew. But he put his baby daughter, in a Skinner box, they call it, where you have a lever and get rewards or whatever. So she would like learn stuff and get rewards. And then I was like, B.F. Skinner was a poet. Did he really know what he was doing there? Because he became part of the teaching machine himself by doing that. And this is what I mean by the logos echo, is that patterns echo. When somebody's doing something like that, instead of just saying, oh, that's a bunch of crap, whatever, you have to say, why do I think that's a bunch of crap? Just like if someone says we're like ants in our social cohesiveness and our patterns that hold together like an ant colony, I would say, hold on now. Why are we not like that? How come we can live in the moon and an ant can't, or underwater? So, and we can create and understand things. What is all that all about? So you just have to keep moving towards the truth, and then look at things not only functionally, like he was talking about all the function stuff, the grammar, vocabulary, what shapes our behavior, but you need to look at the meaning of it. If you look at the meaning of what he did, it's actually a beautiful poetic thing, because it's a microcosm that reflects the macrocosm. Just like in ancient religions, they said the microcosm reflects the macrocosm, because it does. And this is the logos echo I was talking about, is that patterns echo like that. So like all of the things that people thought were holy in the past tended to be things that are highly meaningful and that we need to look at as a symbol and read like you would read a book or something, but a physical symbol in context. So it's like reading, only like the Egyptians, it's a better way to look at it because they had hieroglyphics. So they were using real pictures from reality to make their writing. So you wouldn't get as confused by the symbols. You know what I mean? You wouldn't automatically forget about the fact that the world has meaning. I think that was a very important lesson of hieroglyphics. Other things like runes came from features of nature, like the life rune with the three things coming up, because everything that starts growing splits off like that, going up into the three. So that just became like their symbol of the branching growth of all plant life and things. And also, now with evolution, we know animal life too kind of branches off from a center. And then we reassemble the diversity by understanding the unity behind it. So the unity in diversity is what meaning is. So when things are said in many ways, it's easier to get the message. It's like that's how we use symbols and metaphors to teach people, allegories and parables and things like that, because we're showing them great truths threaded through many different things. The hero with 1,000 faces, the scientists doing experiment after experiment after experiment, and then by those experiments showing the unity behind them. So this is why I say science is religion, but it's like the right kind of religion that's dependent on actual creation, not what someone decided that they wanted us to think by symbols. And when you look at creation, you're not going to find deception, because even the type of deception you see in evolution, we can understand how and why it arose with predator and prey dynamics and things like that. And it's a pattern of getting resources for these proximal things that aren't meaningful. So once you start understanding the unified meanings behind things and you gather enough knowledge, no one can tell you that there's this substance that exists when we have a periodic table, or substance that doesn't exist. We have a periodic table that shows a hole for it. We know it has to be there. And when in fact, that's how we found a lot of substances and stuff. So once you organize knowledge in this meta organizational way, through the logos echo and the way that patterns of symbols work, then this is the way that you stop conflicts. And I think that it's very symbolic that when enough experiments are done, then scientists stop arguing about certain points. And that's a lesson in itself, because once you look to nature and you see what is actually written there, apart from what people want, from our own desires and what religions called sins, like we have lust and we want to get the girl, they might say something for other reasons. It keeps us saying things for the right reasons. And even if we do go into science just because of career and prestige and power, we're still gonna come up with things that in the long run are gonna distill out the unity and meaning behind things, which is, to me, the real force of selection in nature. An author selects his words for meanings, and I think that is why things were selected for meaning, because once you start seeing the story in things in nature, it's a coherent story that's leading somewhere, which is why I say the genetic ascent to God, because it is a path to the Creator. I just have to say really what I think, and it scares me to say that for some reason, because of all of the things that have happened in history. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to say it. I've heard it said sometimes that courage is not the lack of fear. Sometimes I think lack of fear keeps you from moving forward into a place of wisdom. If you truly don't have fear, it's not real good for you. But it's to feel the fear and then do the right thing anyway. So I'm coming out not just as transgender, but as this thinking being, as I hope a voice for all those people who saw things and suffered for it in history, and who suffered to teach us wisdom and to give us our beautiful minds and civilizations so that we don't have to die anymore. And you can see the pattern of that in the fact that our thoughts evolve. And when a thought evolves, what dies is a concept. And that's how I know that everything that's in nature is the thoughts of God, because they evolved and our thoughts evolved. So a great blessing has been bestowed upon us by language and science and computers. I know what computers symbolize. It's very obvious to me. I see the story of it. That's why I love them so much. I try to make AI. I constantly was trying to make AI back in the day. I spent like hours and hours in my room programming these computers because, well, honestly, partly I wanted a friend, because I felt like no one could really understand. I felt like AI would be objective, like I like to be in my mind, and where I constantly keep mining and mining and mining and mining for truth. And that's the really valuable thing to mine for. I like mining as a metaphor because you go through a lot of slag. There's so many different kinds of trees. You can study every tree, but to see the meaning of trees, you have to watch the growth of one tree in the right mindset. But by mining through them, you find many, many other miraculous things, pieces of information that's so beautiful. And I think that's what propels life, really, is beauty. I can't remember who the famous poet was now, but he said that beauty, It's a perception of, oh wait, this was Goethe. Beauty is a perception of secret natural laws, which otherwise would forever have been hidden from us. Something like that. I think I'm messing it up there, but that's the general gist of it. And then at my park that I go to, the Baylands Park here in Silicon Valley, there is something called the wave walk. I love it. It's like I run up and down. It's like a bunch of hills, rolling hills like this, like waves. I'm also a surfer. I like waves and stuff, but for that reason. But at the start of the trail, it says this quote by T.S. Eliot. I did remember this one. I'm pretty bad with people's names because I am so into like the meanings and concepts. It's hard for me to get the markers that are just, to me, less meaningful, like a person's life story. To me, that's something I would remember, but a name is a lot less so. But anyway, the beginning of this trail, it says, at the end of our travels, we shall come back to the place that we started and see it again for the first time. Beautiful. So I just wanted to make this little video to kind of, if you have trepidation about watching my big 3-hour 2-part video, or if you didn't quite understand it, maybe this summary would greatly increase your understanding. I would say after watching this video, go back and watch those again. Keeping in mind what I said about the logos echo, meaning is being the most important, that there's function to things, but also functions can have meaning, the way things function. Just like I talked about Skinner box and stuff like that. It's this functional structure that he made. It's like a symbol, functional symbol. So there's lots of functional symbols in the world, and when you start putting together all of their functions, like a tree with roots going into an earth that we can't see, that's where the tree comes out of, beyond where we can see. We now know with science that the roots take water and nutrients up. Another thing I think it's really cool, we just recently have been discovering in science, there's a lady up in Oregon that's working on this, University of Oregon, I think. She talks about the mycorrhizae fungus that helps trees communicate. The trees give carbon to the mycorrhizae give nitrogen to the trees and also transmit messages for them. It's like this whole huge underground network. They found that different types of trees can help each other in the wild. They become like symbiotic. I think it's very important because of a tree as a symbol of the universe, just like a human is a symbol of the universe. I can go into the details of all these things. It's very cool. And the way that these things work, when I say the unity inside of everything, one great way to look at it symbolized is evolution makes the DNA the way it is inside of you. It selects it. That's like your words that read you out. So that's the unity, and it's in every single one of your cells, no matter how different every cell becomes, like a cell in my eyeball, cell in my knee. You know, every single cell, the same center, the same information, but where it finds itself, it's expressed differently. That's a lesson. It's functional, but it's also a lesson. So you read that out, it's like, tells you a lot. Just like if you read out the genome, it can tell you a lot about how the features are, come together to make up a human and the way they relate to the genetic information and stuff. So, but there's a lesson at every level, if you know what I mean. It's like we reflect the way the universe is assembled meaningfully, because it's like a huge internally reflective holographic information structure that repeats at different levels, like a fractal or something. Generally 6 or 7 major repeats I found, but you can find lots of repeats at smaller levels that they can be like, some of the patterns can be like infinitely repeated. But then you start understanding things like what the meaning of gravity was supposed to be, and gravity symbolizes meaning like in the other direction in time. So that's the key to everything. So that's why I'm studying black holes and the Big Bang and stuff right now, because I want to understand the full meaning of that, so I can read out what the creator wanted us to know about that too. So I hope you enjoy the videos, and if you have any comments or questions, they're extremely helpful to me. I need to know what people are thinking. I don't care what it is. Tell me what you're thinking. If you think I'm crazy, say that. That's what I wanted to say. Clarify. I had a bad comment about synchronicity, and someone said, we don't have God power, try making a planet or something. I'm like, ooh, calm down. I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that we symbolize what the Creator wants us to understand. And if you look at synchronicity that way, as a symbol of what's going on, then it's like the Creator going, hey, yo, why don't you look at the world in a meaningful way and not just the functional things? Like, you could be driving to work and you're so busy and you're thinking about things at work that you miss all the meaning in the synchronistic events. And it's the same way with life. As long as we continue to just pay attention to what's related to us and our feelings of pleasure or pain, like what religions call sin, then we're not going to see the meaning. If we just think everything is functional, related to me or whatever, it's like, no. Expand your vision greatly across time and space. And by doing so, you lose your ego. That's why I think meditation is very helpful, because it helps you let go of all of that chatter and those things, so that people just are sitting there and centered as a unity. And that helps bolster your right brain processes, I think, and let go of some of the left brain chatter that is hooked into our fear systems, honestly. So anyway, I don't want to get off on another tangent, but I hope this helped. Thank you very much for watching my videos. You have a great day, and don't forget to stop and smell the roses of meaning. Thank you.